All right, joining me now on a Comcast Business Hotline to talk some 76ers basketball. He covers the team for the Painted Lions. Check him out at NBA Krell on Twitter. It is Austin Krell. What's up, my man?
Rob, I got to tell you, I was at a graduation dinner last night, and I was checking my phone to the very end of the Phillies game, and I see on the MLB app that Travis Jankowski gets caught stealing second, or gets caught stealing third. So I'm thinking, okay, I haven't seen the actual play, so I'll give the benefit of the doubt before I give any kind of judgment. And I wasn't disappointed in what I saw. I thought it would be ugly, and it was very ugly. I was surprised by, I guess, the amount of just ridiculousness of it all.
I just threw my hands up in the air and I went, it figures. It just figured. I'm like, this is the Phillies. This is who they are. This is a bad baseball team, and bad things happen to bad baseball teams. And here's a guy being overly aggressive, and he gets picked off second base, and the catcher runs all the way out there and makes a fan. I just appreciated that part of it, Austin, because the catcher ran all the way out there, and it was a picture-perfect play. The funny thing is so you know what it's like on the Zoom call. So I'm on the Zoom call with the Washington beat reporters after I hopped off the Phillies. And the way they were, like, when you're on a call and you hear another reporter ask a question and you're like, you probably never played the game before in your life, because the questions that Alex Avila was getting from a couple of the reporters who were just blown away by the play. And he kept emphasizing, hey, listen, this is a fundamental play. This is how I'm taught in high school and in college. You just don't see it much in the Major League Baseball level, but in high school and in college, you're taught run at the guy, force him to go back to the base. If he goes one way or another, you throw. If he doesn't, you just tag him. And the questions were like, I almost felt embarrassed. Like, man, I don't even want to be on this Zoom call. But let's switch the conversation. Let's talk a little bit about the team that you cover, the Philadelphia 76ers, as they dispose of the Washington Wizards in 5 games. Joel Embiid goes down. They lose game 4. Ben steps up at the 5 spot in game 5, and they win that one. First off, what do you think about Joel Embiid right now, his status? Do you get a sense, do you get a gut feeling whether or not he's going to play game 1?
I thought Dwight Howard yesterday kind of gave away the secret that, he said that Joel was looking good and he was able to move laterally, which is kind of a giveaway for me. And he said that he should be ready to go. And then another reporter kind of asked him to clarify, and he walked it back a little bit. And then today, Doc was very, very dismissive, and maybe not dismissive. I mean, I asked him, I was like, is there an update? And he was kind of passive of the, the same as yesterday, couldn't go live and only go shoot around. So, I think they're trying to sort of keep it on the low. If I had to guess, I would probably put my money against him playing tomorrow, just because I think they want to test the waters, see if they can get away with one without him. And if they lose one, then they have to play in game 2, or else you might go down 2-0, headed back to Atlanta. But I think the fan base is very much up in arms, and chaos is ensuing. And I do think that the injury, by all accounts, is not as severe as one typically thinks when they hear torn in relation to a ligament in the knee.
Well, my feeling is that you hold him out until you absolutely until you lose a game. Once you lose a game, then you play him. And if you win game 1, keep him out. And if you win game 2, keep him out. If you win game 3, then I'll go, all right, I don't want him to get his first taste back on the court in the Eastern Conference Finals. You're up 3-0, give him some minutes in game 4. Are you okay with that, or do you feel like if he's ready to go, you need to play him?
I think so. The way my brain works is this. I think game 1 is the tone-setting game for the series. You want to come out and make a good first impression. Mm-hmm. So I think if he's ready to go game 1, you play him, and let's say you dominate and you really come out and you whoop him. I would probably maybe limit him a little bit in game 2, or maybe even give him the game off, just to keep that knee well rested, if you will. But I do think that you have to give at least one game in Philly to start If you can get 2 without him, then you're in tremendous position anyway. But you have to be going back to Atlanta tied 1-1, and whether that includes Embiid or not, it's kind of going to be up to the organization because I think there's a real chance that they could lose this series if they try to take a passive approach with Embiid and try to limit him.
Wow. Okay, so that was my other question today, Austin, is that I know that there's some national people out there who, for whatever reason, are extremely high on Atlanta, and they don't think they think they have a legitimate chance. I kind of feel one way, with or without Joel. With him, you sweep or you win in 5. I'll go 5 because he may be limited. And without him, I still think the Sixers are that much better than the Hawks that they win in 6. But you kind of think Atlanta's got a chance?
Yeah. So number one, Trae Young is as deficient as he is as a defensive player. Mm-hmm. He's a very, very, very good offensive player. He's a tremendous mind in terms of reading defenses on the fly, and he really puts a hurting on teams with his dribble penetration. And that Knicks team is a really good defensive Knicks team, and he was putting on a show in that series. So I think he in himself is confident right now. That's a problem. But also they have really good wing players. The Sixers beat them badly in 2 games in, I think, April it was, without but they weren't, they didn't have Kevin Huerter, they didn't have DeAndre Hunter, they didn't have Bogdan Bogdanovic, who are 3 of their rotation wings. And their wing depth is very real. They have guys who can shoot it. They have guys that can switch. So I think, the big key, I think, for me, just from what I've rewatched of old games this season with them, is going to be Clint Capella. Because if you don't have Embiid out there, Capella is going to feast. And we saw it in the Washington series. Like, Daniel Gafford was a beast in that Washington series because the Sixers just they weren't boxing out. And they weren't rotating well under the basket. So he was sneaking in and getting offensive rebounds and getting extra possessions out of that. And Capella is averaging, I think, 14 rebounds a game, something like that this season. There he was, at least last time I checked. So Capella is going to create extra opportunities for them too, and they have shooting. So I think that this Hawks team is better than their record says. But keep in mind, they were 14-20 when they fired Lloyd Pierce, and then since then, I think they're 27-11. So they're a better team than their record indicates.
So if Joel's out, you would anticipate Ben playing the 5, right? And he would they put him then on Capella, or would you want to put him on Trae Young? How does the doc go defensively if Joe's out?
Well, if Joe's out, I think it's a much more challenging thing. I mean, number one, Dwight Howard, I think, has a little bit of intrigue in the series because he had a really good game against the Hawks. I think he had 19 and 11 against them and towards the end of the regular season in a game where he was just out muscling all their players and just dunking on everybody. So I think Dwight could pose an interesting thing there. But I think defensively, and this is a huge, huge thing in this series, is how do you limit Trae Young's activity in the middle of the lane? How do you keep him out of the middle of the floor where he's a really good playmaker? There's a defensive concept that I like called ice, where basically you deny the pick and roll in the middle of the floor and make them sort of attack the baseline side, and you're funneling them right to the rim, really. And so you're kind of taking away the pull up. You're kind of making him say okay, you're going to either get these awkward mid range pull up shots, or you're going to get pull up threes, but we're not going to let you get right into the teeth of us and create havoc. And I think Young is a reputed 3-point shooter, but this season his percentages are down a little bit. So I think it's very much you play it by ear, and you have to adjust very quickly with Trae Young, because he processes defenses very well. That's what makes him so great. And you really just got to force the ball out of his hands. He's turnover prone. So those are all key things that you have to think about.
We're talking to Austin Krell, who covers the Sixers for the Painted Lines, also a columnist at Last Out Media, at NBA Krell on Twitter if you want to follow him. Is it too simple, Austin, to say, well, In Washington, you had Bradley Beal, who is every bit, and probably, I think Bradley Beal's a better all-around player right now than Trae Young and Russell Westbrook, and you were able to win that series, and neither one of those guys, Beal averaged 30, but he didn't go off for 50. He didn't have a 45. He didn't have a – so is it too simplistic to say if you were able to do that to two guys on Washington – you can find a way to limit the damage that Trae Young will be able to do?
I guess to like an extent, but I think really the difference here is, the Wizards had Davis Bertans and they had Rui Hachimura, who were, really just their two main featured pieces on the wings.
By the way, he had a nice series, Hachimura, especially towards the end. I think he showed his potential for sure.
For sure. But the Hawks, they have, I think, 3 or 4 wings that I think are credible guys that not only are they, do they have shooting gravity in the way that Davis Bertans does, but they also have the ability where you can if you're switching on defense, they're going to bully you, and they're going to, they know how to work. They can create their own shot. Their offensive challenges here are very real, and I think the Tobias Harris's defense is something that's going to be massive in the series. Danny Green's defense is going to be massive in the series. Matisse Thybulle, of course, but I think that the fact that they have such wing depth really alleviates the pressure that Trae Young faces to make plays, because he can play a little bit off ball now. He doesn't have to do everything in the way that Westbrook and Beal had to. So I think this is a much different team than the Wizards are.
All right, Austin, I'm going to have to get your take on the way Ben Simmons performed in the 5-game series against the Washington Wizards. I think a little bit along the lines of what Doc Rivers is saying, and he's not appreciated enough. And I get the frustration with his inability to make foul shots, but I've reached a point where I don't anticipate or expect or think Ben is ever going to be a scorer. He's not a scorer. He does a lot of other things well, and he's does a lot of other things. He's great at so many other areas, so I can live with some of the offensive flaws in his game because he is such a well-rounded guy. I'd like to see him make 75% of his free throws. That's the one area where I definitely need to see improvement. And he's young enough to where I think he can get better at all facets of his game. How do you look back at, 1, the series that Ben had, and then 2, the criticism that he still gets?
Yeah, I think anyone who follows me on Twitter, they know that I am definitely one of the people who says, whoa, let's take a step back here and, evaluate the guy on a more even-keeled and fair platform. I mean, people want to trade the guy because he can't make free throws or he doesn't take 3-point jump shots. And that's not the way I look at him. I mean, the bottom line here that I've kind of come to realize is people, they want to see statistics in their stars that are very digestible within the box score, the basic box score of, free throw percentage and rebounds, assists, points. And his value just isn't always on, the basic box score. Mm-hmm. And I think so much of what he does is just creating open shots and starting transition offense. I mean, if Danny Green gets a wide open 3 in the corner in transition with nobody back, Ben Simmons isn't getting the credit, but if he's the guy that's making the outlet pass ahead of everybody, that isn't that kind of him generating value.
You would think.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think a lot of his value is you have to go back and sort of trace, okay, where did this shot come from? And that's, Ben Simmons got the rebound and pushed it ahead and got this guy an open look. So I think Ben is he isn't your traditional star in that he's going to score a ton. He can score. He's shown he can score. I mean, he drops 42 points on, one of the guys who's a defensive player of the year candidate in Rudy Gobert in Utah. But he understands, and Doc has made this clear, that his role is on this team is not to be the primary scorer. It's to be the facilitator and the defensive mastermind. And Joel Embiid is the lead scorer. And so the way that Joel Embiid got to this point where he's scoring so much enough to be the MVP candidate is because other guys are not taking as many shots. And so it's kind of like you have to give and take with Ben Simmons. And I think, he's comfortable with saying, you know what, this is our best shot at scoring here is for me to defer and get other guys involved and let Embiid work. And I mean, they're the 1 seed, so what is there really to complain about here?
Austin, it seems like Doc Rivers has taken the defend Ben no matter what philosophy in news conferences, even if he comes off as being the aggressor towards media. And of course, this week, there was a little bit of the, you guys keep pushing whatever narrative you want, but Ben, he doesn't understand it, doesn't see it. How do you think Doc has handled this? Because it's been different than the way Brett Brown did.
Well, I think, number one, when Doc's answering questions like that, and I think what it comes down to is he's not like trying to appease the fan base and give the fans what they want to hear. He's thinking about, I'm trying to market myself and this team to not only my current players to get them to buy in, but also the guys that are going to be available in the future, guys that are free agents. They're going to be free agents that are going to see this.
Well said.
They're going to think, well, I want to play with this guy. He's an advocate for his players. That's going to help him down the road. And now maybe the fans don't like that Doc says that a point per possession is good, analytically speaking. Which, by the way, all the analytics that would say, yeah, a point per possession is actually pretty good value. I would probably retort with, well, what is that on a free throw basis where it's you're going to the line every time, because then that isn't that great. But I definitely think that Doc is a politician, and I think he is someone who is calculated, and that very clear defense of Ben Simmons is not only going to endure Ben or endear him more to Ben and make Ben buy into him more, but there's going to be guys that are sitting on their couches right now eating ice cream and watching that and thinking, oh, I like to play for that guy. I'm a free agent this offseason. I'm going to call my agent and let's see where this goes.
Austin, I was really excited by Tyrese Maxey. Just the energy that he brings, what looked to me like his fearlessness, was not afraid of the moment. He was creating so much. And to me, this is a kid who has not only a huge future with the team, but I think can be an impact in this series coming up and in the next one, assuming they get past Atlanta. What do you see as the upside for Tyrese Maxey?
Yeah, so with Tyrese Maxey, I was kind of speculating for a while that I thought maybe they would trade him at the deadline in a bigger deal to get like a guy like Kyle Lowry, and then after that I kind of thought, well, maybe there's a move this offseason that might include him. But right now, I think he has certainly played himself into the graces of the head coach, and he's just been in a lightning rod, and he's been electric for this group. One thing that you can look at in sort of the stat side that is more conducive to projecting stardom is guys' abilities to be efficient when they drive to the rim and score at the basket. And Tyrese has been amongst the best rookies in terms of points at the rim and efficiency at the rim. So I think that projects well. And I think, that jump shot comes along to the point where he can be an above average 3-point shooter or even an average 3-point shooter, but maybe even an above average guy who makes pull-up shots. I think he has some all-star status in him. But I think the play around the rim is just so incredible. I mean, his ability to finish and just get guys off guard and then burst around them is just incredible. And it's something this team hasn't had in ages.
Austin, great stuff, man. Look forward to your coverage of the 76ers throughout the series into the offseason after the parade or however long they go at the Painted Lines. Also a columnist for Last Out Media. And you do a bunch of podcasts, don't you, also, right?
I am all over the place, is what I would say.
All right. He's Austin Krell at NBA Krell on Twitter. Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rob.
And Austin Krell joined us on the Comcast Business Hotline. Comcast Business, every day in business is a big day. Let Comcast Business keep you ready for what's next. 610-632-0975. You just heard Austin talk about the 76ers.